When I was in high school, I had an idea. I thought that a competition TV show that would help find the next great music artist would be a great idea. Now, I didn't see this as a singing competition, which is what American Idol is. I saw it as a competition that would help discover the next great musical talent. Not just someone who was a great singer, but someone who could create great music. I wanted a show that would find us the next John Lennon, the next David Bowie, the next Bob Dylan. Something that American Idol has never done, and something that it was never designed to do. This was back in the 70s when the only talent show we had was The Gong Show. In the 80s, we had Star Search. Star Search included a band competition, and they even let them perform original songs. But it was too scattered in its approach, showcasing both comedians, models, and a whole bunch of other stuff to really focus on music. Then came American Idol. Over the years, I have had a love-hate and a hate-love relationship with the show. For many years, I loved to hate it. And then, in its second incarnation, I began to hate myself for loving it. Well, okay, maybe not loving, but at least liking it a lot and being able to respect it. When I first glimpsed the show during its first season, I thought it was the cheesiest thing I'd ever seen. Good-looking young kids with good voices singing to pre-recorded tracks. To me, it was just glorified karaoke, and I really thought that this show would get laughed off the air. I couldn't have been more wrong. After my brief exposure to the series, I did my best to ignore it, but found that it was everywhere and was taking America by storm. The series, originally an American version of the British series Pop Idol, would soon see versions popping up in just about every country, including an unofficial version called Afghan Idol in Afghanistan. I would be on break from my cover gigs, and people would come up to me and ask me what I thought of such and such contestant, assuming that since I was a musician, I must really like the show. At the time, I was also playing in a 12-piece funk rock band that was doing all original songs. One day while rehearsing, the female singer in our band complained that she was missing American Idol. I asked her why she didn't audition for the show since she was herself an amazing vocalist. She explained to me that she was disqualified from the show because of her age. In other words, she was too old. And I thought to myself, too old? I personally felt that she could sing most of the show's contestants that were competing during that year under the table. I also thought that there was something fundamentally wrong with the fact that a show that called itself American Idol would bar talented people from having a shot at the so-called dream. To me, this was as bad as saying you can't be on the show if you are black, or Mexican, or Jewish, or gay. To me, it was outright discrimination. After all, does talent stop at 30? To me, this was blatant discrimination. Of course, ageism wasn't the only fault this show had at the time. And when I say at the time, I am speaking of the Simon Cowell era of the show, because there are two distinct eras for this show, the Simon Cowell era and the Harry Connick era. There was this brief middle period after Simon Cowell and before Harry Connick arrived, but the show immediately improved after Cowell's departure. But more on this later. Now, during the Simon Cowell era, I can honestly say that I hated American Idol so much that if the show were a person, I would have strangled it to death with my bare hands and would have giggled with maniacal glee like a schoolgirl while doing it. I think that the damage that American Idol did to music and to musicians during the Simon Cowell era is still being felt, but that music as an art form is slowly recovering. American Idol during the Simon Cowell era flooded the marketplace with good-looking singers who sang well, but who for the most part had little to add to the legacy of popular music. Week after week, we had these young, talented singers singing great songs by great artists like Stevie Wonder, the Beatles, Elton John. But never did anyone ask if any of these contestants could create a song as good as Stevie Wonder, the Beatles, or Elton John. And this is because songwriting and musicianship never came into the equation. So how were you going to get great albums out of them when you never bothered to even find out if they could create great music? In fact, since there was no live band during the show's early years, contestants couldn't even be original in how they interpreted their song choices. They had to pretty much sing it like the record. This did begin to change once a live band was put into the show, but it changed very slowly. Because during the Simon Cowell era, being original was not something that American Idol encouraged. One of my favorite quotes from Mr. Cowell during his tenure there was, "Being artistic is fine, but not on this show." Of course, this show was not about discovering a David Bowie or the next Beatles. It was about control. Over the years, there would be those episodes where they would catch up with previous contestants, and numerous times I would hear those contestants say the exact same thing. Said contestant would now be working on their third album, and probably no longer on a major label, and they would say, "And now I am going to do the album that I felt I always should have done." In other words, they were not allowed to make the album they wanted to make initially. Season 11 winner Philip Phillips filed a lawsuit against 19 Entertainment, which, by the way, is the management company Idol winners are signed to. He filed the lawsuit against them for manipulating him into taking jobs where he was forced to perform without compensation for sponsors of the TV show. In fact, several American Idol winners and contestants have taken legal action against the show, claiming that it does not put the interests of their clients before its own. The lawsuits claim they are given questionable recording contracts that force them to sign away their rights. I always felt that 2009 contestant Adam Lambert played the Idol game better than anyone else. In fact, I felt that he was the only one that was smart enough to play the game. All through his season, everyone felt that he was the front runner. He was going to be the winner. And then at the end of the show, he threw it, just enough, by doing some performances that were not up to his usual standard. Don't get me wrong, he sang well. He just brought it down a notch by just singing faithfully to the record and doing nothing more with it. And all throughout that season, he became the guy that was known for completely turning songs around. And I think he did it deliberately. Of course, this is just my opinion. But I think he did it deliberately so that he could take second place. By not being the winner, he still got the record deal. And he probably won a lot more control over his musical direction and his career as a result. The other thing that I didn't like about Idol during this time was its endorsement of cruelty. Simon Cowell would always say that he was just being honest, and that he was doing these contestants a favor by dissuading them from trying to make a life with music. But Simon Cowell was unnecessarily cruel, and the show fed into it by spotlighting the worst of the worst in order to give him easy targets to attack. Most everyone knows now that before you see the TV judges, you first see a panel of pre-judges. But there has been conjecture that before seeing the TV judges, these really awful contestants would get built up by the pre-panel, who would tell them that they were really good and set them up for shock when they finally got in front of the TV cameras. This is, of course, conjecture. But what is not conjecture is that American Idol made entertainment out of the humiliation of its early auditioners. And I can say this with confidence because those episodes were not live, and those terrible contestants could have been edited out. Compare this to how much more compassion current judges, Harry Connick Jr., Keith Urban, and Jennifer Lopez show to all contestants, even those who are not good enough to make it to Hollywood. The turning point for this occurred during the first season after Simon Cowell left. Randy Jackson was laughing at a contestant's audition when Steven Tyler turned to him and told him in no uncertain terms, "Don't ever laugh." You see, you can be honest to someone who is not good or not good yet without being cruel. And if you are a professional, you shouldn't be. It takes a lot to get up there in front of people, especially celebrities that you admire. Nowhere was this more obvious than in the case of Paula Goodspeed. Paula Goodspeed was a woman who committed suicide in her car close to Paula Abdul's home not too long after her audition for the series was televised. Yes, she was an unstable woman, and no, she could not sing well. But she was treated with naked cruelty by the show's original judges. Show business can be tough, and audiences can be cruel, and you have to have a thick skin to survive. But contestants like this should be eliminated before they get a chance to audition on camera, and not humiliated in front of one. The only reason to show these contestants is to appeal to sadism and to profit off the misery of others. What's even sadder to me about all of this is that when this level of cruelty stopped, there was critical backlash that the show and its judges had gotten too nice. But what had really happened is that after Simon Cowell left, the bar for talent was set a lot higher and has continued to be set higher with each succeeding season. I personally find Simon Cowell's taste in music to be offensively boring. I'm not saying that all the top 10 contestants were bad during this time, but there were a lot of mediocre contestants who made it to the show's top 10 that would probably never have even made it past the cuts of Hollywood Week with the current judges. It is a lot harder to have harsh things to say when you raise the bar on talent. But with cruelty replaced by constructive criticism, the show got lower ratings. And this is just a sad commentary on America itself. There are a lot of us who want to see people humiliated on camera, and they are the worst that America has to offer. Beyond just ending the cruelty, there were so many other good things that happened once the new judges took over. There were real attempts to educate the audience and the contestants about music history. There was one episode where they took the time to explain the technical aspects of performing, such as why onstage monitors are important and how things sound totally different on stage versus being in the audience. The new judges really encouraged contestants to figure out who they were. The old show would constantly be telling contestants that on the one hand, you have to be yourself, but on the other hand, you have to be able to sing anything we tell you to. They couldn't have given more contradictory advice, and this couldn't have been more Jekyll Hyde. Another aspect of the show during this time that was completely schizophrenic, and cruel as well, was the whole idea of a contestant getting voted off the show and then being made to sing after the fact. Imagine this for a moment. You've just been rejected by a nationwide audience, and you've just been given an emotional punch in the stomach. And now you have to sing for them. This was something that I was very glad to see go in the later half of the show. The post-Cowell era also allowed the contestants to play instruments at the auditions, which I thought was a great thing. Now you may ask, why is that important? Being a music artist isn't always about just singing. Can you imagine telling Elton John not to play the piano, or telling Eric Clapton not to play the guitar? Their respective instruments help to inform and define who they are as music artists. Now, can you also imagine telling either of them not to write a song? Because if you can't imagine that, then you should understand why the show's greatest failing at finding great music artists is its reliance on cover songs. David Grohl of the Foo Fighters summed up this problem in a 60 Minutes TV interview a while back, where he said, "Imagine Bob Dylan auditioning for American Idol. Sorry, you're too nasal sounding. Next." And even this began to change during the Harry Connick era. Contestants could actually audition with one of their original songs, and later we even began to see contestants perform original songs during the actual competition. This would never have been allowed during the Simon Cowell era. And now let's stop for a moment and talk about the differences between the judges. Simon Cowell is not a musician, not a vocalist, not a songwriter, and not a musical performer. He is allowed to judge them, though. Paula Abdul is a professional choreographer. She did have a short music career in the 80s, but she was heavily implicated in the lip-syncing scandals of the late 80s, early 90s that culminated with Milli Vanilli having to give back their Grammys. Paula Abdul's allegations of lip-syncing were, to the best of my knowledge, never proven publicly, but the one time that I did see her perform live on Idol, she was clearly lip-syncing. Randy Jackson was, to me, the only one of the original three judges who had any right to be there. He was a professional session player who has worked with some of the best in the industry. He's worked with people like Keith Richards, Steve Lukather. He's worked with rock groups like Journey. In my opinion, he was the only one that had a right to be there. Now, Keith Urban, Jennifer Lopez, and Harry Connick Jr. brought a real sense of respect for musicians and for music. And Harry Connick Jr. could be a tough critic, but he was always fair and respectful. He is well educated in music theory, and professionals in the music industry view him as a musician's musician. Keith Urban is a solid performer and songwriter and session player with formidable skills as a guitarist. And when I saw him on the Grammys performing right up on stage there with giants like B.B. King, he could hold his own. And he has said repeatedly that he came up doing talent shows like American Idol in his youth. So it's no wonder that he tempers his criticisms with compassion and encouragement. And now, while I have never been a fan of Jennifer Lopez's music, I've always thought that she was a very good actress, and I have been impressed with how spot on her criticisms and her advice to the contestants have been. As much as I hated watching the show with its original judges, I really enjoyed watching the show with its current judges. I should also give a shout out to Steven Tyler, who was a judge during that interim period, and who also encouraged that cruelty be replaced with compassion and constructive criticism. In the new series, True Diversity in Music was now being presented, and real friendships seemed to naturally develop between the contestants as a result, rather than the blood sport mentality of the previous era. And I got to see some absolutely awesome performance from the best of these contestants. Now, I had been working for years, struggling as a musician, playing cover gigs, being a musician for hire, and trying to record and release my own original songs. And I found watching these performances to be both educational and inspiring. So even though the current version of American Idol was still not my perfect idea of what a show like this should be trying to accomplish, it did become respectful of musicians and their talents, and for that I am grateful. But there is one more thing. You see, I do have my own personal experience with this show. I was never a contestant, although you might think so if you watch the video that I'm linking to right now. Now, remember that female singer that I mentioned earlier who was too old to be a contestant? Well, I was appalled by this discrimination. I thought she was tremendously talented and deserved her chance to audition for the show. But she was in her 30s and therefore disqualified. So, in typical songwriter fashion, I wrote a song about it in protest. The song was called American Idol. I created a video for the song and posted it on YouTube. The video was humorous and used clips of the TV show so that it appeared as if I was interacting with the show's judges. Within 2 days, the video was going viral with over 225,000 views. And within 4 days, the video was taken down. Fremantle International, the media giant that owns the American Idol TV show, had YouTube take the video down on the grounds that I was violating their copyright. Now, my song was an original song, and I was perfectly within my rights of free speech to perform the song. The use of clips from the show fell completely within the rights of fair use for commentary and satire. And in case you're wondering, you can't copyright a song title. But YouTube's automated takedown system and Fremantle International's bucket loads of cash influence allowed them to not only silence my video and the song that was critical of their show, but I actually ended up getting my channel taken down as well. My rights to free speech were taken away from me as a result. And this because of a show that calls itself American. You know, that little upstart country founded on the ideas of free speech. Thanks to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, I did finally get my video and channel back, but by that time, the damage had been done and they had prevented my video and my message from going viral. I guess I should be bitter, but I am not. Like I said, the music industry can be tough and you have to have a thick skin. And now that I actually find myself enjoying the show, I am sorry to see it going. Perhaps we can never have the idea TV show that I dreamt of in high school. Perhaps this is not the best way to find the next generation of music talent. I enjoyed American Idol during its latter half, but I guess it's time we all moved on. This is TJR for TJRmusic.com, and if you like this video, please subscribe, and I look forward to reading your comments. Thanks.